The void between realms is not a silent place. It is a roaring tunnel of cosmic energy, the rainbow bridge known as the Bifrost, channeling powers that could shatter stars. Thor Odinson, god of thunder, prince of Asgard, reveled in the noise. He was hurtling away from Vanaheim after a skirmish with rock trolls that had been disappointingly brief. Mjolnir gripped tight in his gauntlet fist, anticipating the golden spires of home. Then, the screaming of the cosmos changed pitch. It wasn't the usual smooth hum of Heimdall's magic. It was a tearing sound, a jagged screech of reality snagging on something sharp. The rainbow light around him fractured, splintering into impossible geometric shapes. Squares and pixels of blinding neon colors that didn't exist in the 9 realms. Heimdall! Thor bellowed against the sudden turbulence, his voice booming like rolling thunder. Hold the bridge steady, man. What trickery is this? There was no answer. The Bifrost didn't just fade. It dissolved into static. Gravity, usually a constant friend to the god who could defy it, twisted violently. Thor was ripped sideways, pulled not by magic, but by an unfamiliar artificial code. He tumbled through a kaleidoscope of wireframe structures and streams of binary data he couldn't comprehend. Below him, a world materialized not from mist and creation, but snapped into existence layer by layer. Terrain meshes, textures, lighting engines. He slammed into the ground with impact force that should have cracked a tectonic plate. Instead of a crater, there was merely a puff of dust. Thor groaned, pushing himself up. Mjolnir was still in his hand, thrumming with agitated energy. He shook his head, his golden mane falling over eyes that narrowed in utter confusion. The air tasted strange, metallic, ozone-rich, but fundamentally fake. It lacked the organic richness of Midgard or the crisp purity of Asgard. He stood in a river that flowed through the center of a strange, narrow valley. To his left, the flora was vibrant, almost aggressively green and lush, glowing with an internal soft light. To his right, the land was scarred, scorched black and volcanic, reeking of sulfur. Where in the 9? Thor muttered, spinning around. The horizon was wrong. It curved too sharply upward, as if the world were a bowl, yet when he looked up, the sky was a flat, painted dome of indistinct clouds that didn't move. Before he could analyze the metaphysics of this strange pocket dimension, movement caught his eye. Marching down the lane from the green side came a squadron of small, hunched creatures draped in green cloth, wielding tiny swords and staves. They moved in perfect unison, their limbs jerking slightly, oblivious to the golden gods standing in their path. Halt, minuscule warriors! Thor commanded, raising a hand. Tell me what realm this is and point me toward its ruler. The creatures, the radiant creeps, didn't even pause. They marched right past his ankles like ants ignoring a mountain. Thor, insulted by their indifference, was about to teach them manners with a gentle tap of his hammer when a horn blasted from the scorched side of the river. The fog, a thick, unnatural gray mist that clung to the edges of his vision, suddenly parted. Something massive was charging out of the darkness. It was a towering figure of bulging red muscle and scarred flesh. It wore heavy iron pauldrons that scraped against its thick neck, and a leather kilt studded with metal. Its jaw jutted out, housing tusks that could gore a boar, and its eyes burned with a singular simple intelligence fixated on violence. But the defining feature was the weapon it carried, a colossal double-headed battle axe that looked heavy enough to anchor a longship. The red giant didn't slow down. It accelerated, roaring in a guttural voice that echoed strangely in this artificial canyon. Axe is here. Thor blinked. Axe? You name yourself after your tool? How marvelously simplistic. Halt, red behemoth. I am Thor Odinson, and I demand. The creature paid no more heed to Thor's titles than the little green men had. It closed the distance with terrifying speed, leaping the last few feet across the shallow river. The massive axe swung in a horizontal arc aimed squarely at Thor's midsection. The sheer audacity of the mortal creature stunned Thor for a microsecond. No normal being attacked a god on sight without hesitation. Thor brought Mjolnir up in a reflex block that he had practiced for centuries. Clang. The sound was not the ringing of metal on URU. It was a flat, crushing noise, like two tectonic plates slamming together inside a tin can. A shockwave rippled out, flattening the grass in a perfect circle and knocking several of the nearby creeping soldiers onto their backs. Thor slid backward a foot in the mud, his boots carving deep furrows. His eyes widened slightly. The brute possessed strength that rivaled the frost giants of Jotunheim. The red warrior, Axe, landed heavily and immediately threw his head back, laughing. It was a loud, abrasive sound. Axe likes this one. This one is sturdy. Not like puny supports that pop when Axe squeezes. Thor straightened his spine, his initial confusion giving way to the familiar warmth of warrior's pride. He spun Mjolnir by the leather strap, the hammer accelerating into a blurring disk of crackling lightning. The sky above darkened instantly, thick gray clouds rolling in over the painted ones, and a bolt of true, Asgardian lightning struck the hammer, charging it until it glowed blinding white. "You strike with vigor, monster," Thor declared, his voice amplified by the gathering storm, booming across the entire map. "But you face the god of thunder. Let us see if your hide is as thick as your skull." Thor hurled Mjolnir. The hammer flew faster than thought, a streak of golden light aiming for Axe's chest. Axe didn't dodge. He didn't raise his weapon to block. Instead, as the hammer made contact, the red giant spun. It was an impossible, physics-defying pirouette. His body became a red tornado of muscle and sharp steel. The impact of Mjolnir, which should have shattered his ribs, seemed to glance off the spinning momentum. Axe stopped spinning, steam rising from his red skin where the lightning had scorched him. He looked down at the burn mark, then back up at Thor, grinning broadly. "Is that all?" Axe was just getting warmed up. "Come." Culling blade hungers. Axe charged again, bellowing a war cry that seemed to override all other sounds in this strange artificial world. Thor hefted Mjolnir, a feral grin matching the red beast's. He didn't know where he was, or why this creature was so unreasonably durable, but the language of combat was universal. And Thor was fluent. The collision was cataclysmic. Thor, launching himself from the muddy riverbank, met Axe in midair. Mjolnir hammered against the blade of the giant axe, the impact sending a shockwave that momentarily stopped the flow of the digital river. In any other realm, against any other mortal foe, Thor's blow would have shattered the opponent's weapon and collapsed their ribcage. Yet, Axe merely grunted, his feet sliding backward on the invisible ground as he landed, digging furrows into the terrain that immediately began to fade away. Thor landed lightly, his brow furrowed. He had felt the resistance. It wasn't just dense muscle and bone. It was as if the very reality of this place was cushioning the blow, capping the damage he could inflict. The Thunder God was used to physics bending to his will. Here, physics felt like a rigid set of rules he hadn't read. "You are strangely built, Red One," Thor noted, swinging Mjolnir casually at his side, sparks jumping from the head. "My hammer has felled frost giants and cosmic horrors. Yet you stand there barely winded, looking like an oversized tomato that has been dropped too many times." Axe slapped his chest, the sound like two slabs of wet meat hitting together. "Axe is not tomato. Axe is AXE. And your little sparkly hammer tickles." The insult to Mjolnir was too much. Thor roared, leaping forward again. He unleashed a flurry of blows, a divine combo that would have leveled a small army. He smashed Mjolnir into Axe's knee, hooked an uppercut to his jaw, and brought the hammer down squarely on his helmeted head. Thwack. Crunch. Boom. Axe stumbled. A floating red bar above his head, something Thor had initially dismissed as a trick of the strange lighting, shortened perceptibly. But instead of falling, the red warrior's eyes began to glow a fiercer, brighter crimson. "Yes. Yes. Make AXE bleed." The creature howled in delight. Suddenly, Axe thrust his free hand forward. He didn't strike Thor. He simply pointed. A wave of sickly, Crimson energy washed over the thunder god. Thor staggered. It wasn't a physical blow. It felt like a sudden, crushing weight of despair and lethargy had been dropped onto his shoulders. His godlike reflexes dulled. The lightning coursing through his veins felt sluggish, like syrup. A burning magical itch erupted beneath his skin, a constant drain on his vitality. What sorcery is this? Thor snarled, shaking his head, trying to clear the magical fog. Above his own head, a small angry red icon appeared, pulsing in time with the draining sensation. Axe calls it battle hunger. Axe boomed, charging forward while Thor was disoriented. You are slow, little lightning man. Slow meat is easy to chop. Thor tried to backpedal, but his legs felt leaden. Axe closed the distance, swinging that massive blade in wide, sweeping arcs. Thor was forced entirely on the defensive, parrying desperately with Mjolnir. Every time the axe struck the hammer, Thor felt a strange vibration that didn't resonate with his bones, but with his very presence in this realm. They tumbled backward, their brawl carrying them out of the river and up the scorched bank toward the dire side. The air grew hotter, smelling of brimstone and ash. I grow weary of your parlor tricks, beast. Thor bellowed, fighting through the sluggishness of the battle hunger. He needed space. He needed to unleash the storm. He slammed Mjolnir into the ground. A massive thunderclap erupted, a localized sonic boom designed to knock opponents backward. It worked. Axe was blasted 10 feet away, tumbling end over end. Thor seized the moment. He held Mjolnir high. Enough games. Face the wrath of Asgard. He channeled his power. The artificial sky turned pitch black. Lightning didn't just strike Mjolnir. It began to rain down wildly across the entire area. Bolts thick as tree trunks slammed into the ground, vaporizing the newly spawned waves of creeps instantly, turning them into showers of gold coins that clattered strangely on the ground. The storm centered on Axe. Thor unleashed a continuous torrent of electricity directly onto the prone warrior. The air filled with blinding white light and the deafening roar of ozone. It was an attack that would incinerate a Chitauri leviathan. Thor lowered his arm, breathing heavily, the battle hunger finally fading from his system as the lightning dissipated. Smoke billowed where Axe had fallen. A worthy bout, Thor admitted to the smoking crater. Though your durability was irritatingly illogical. Perhaps Heimdall can now lock onto my signal. A low, rumbling chuckle emerged from the smoke. Thor froze. Impossible. The smoke cleared. Axe was standing. His skin was charred black in places, and his armor was smoking, but he was standing. The red bar above his head was dangerously low, flickering red, but his grin was wider than ever. The damage he had taken seemed only to have fueled a berserker rage that radiated off him in visible waves of heat. Axe likes sparkles. The behemoth roared, his voice deeper, more primal than before. Before Thor could process this absurdity, a new sound cut through the air. It was the grinding of heavy stone. Thor looked past Axe. A massive, grotesque structure of obsidian and glowing red runes towered over them. A dire Tier 1 tower. A large, fiery crystal at its apex swiveled, locking onto Thor with malevolent intent. It fired. A glob of concentrated fiery energy hurtled toward him. Thor swatted it aside with Mjolnir, but another instantly followed, slamming into his chest plate. It didn't pierce the URU metal, but it stung with a humiliating consistency. Thor stared at the tower in disbelief. Even the architecture here is hostile. Axe, re-energized by near death and seeing Thor distracted by the tower, lowered his head and began to charge again. This time, he wasn't just running. He was accelerating to an impossible speed, a red blur of impending violence. Kull! Axe screamed, the word echoing like a death knell. Thor realized too late that in this strange realm, he wasn't the hunter. He had stepped into an arena where he didn't know the rules, and he was currently standing on the wrong side of the river. Thor was in a predicament he had never faced in all his eons of warfare. He was being suppressed by a building. The dire tower's projectiles were rhythmic, relentless, and ignored his godhood. Each fiery blast chipped away at his stamina. Meanwhile, Axe was closing in, his presence feeling heavier and more dangerous as he neared the threshold of his killing blow. Enough of this madness. Thor roared. He spun Mjolnir and launched himself into the air, aiming to fly over the trees and out of the tower's range. But as he reached a certain height, he hit a shimmering, invisible ceiling. An orange wall of energy crackled against his face, forcing him back down. The map had limits. He was trapped in a digital box. He landed hard near a dense thicket of twisted dark trees. Axe was right behind him, but instead of attacking immediately, the red giant paused. Axe reached into a small pouch at his belt and pulled out a glowing green leaf, a tango. He bit into it, and to Thor's utter bewilderment, the warrior's wounds began to knit together instantly. The charred skin peeled away, revealing fresh, angry red muscle beneath. "You eat foliage to heal your wounds?" Thor asked, disgusted. "Where is the mead? Where is the feast fit for a warrior?" Axe has no time for drinking. Axe has gold. Axe buys armor. With a puff of smoke, a strange donkey-like creature with small wings, a courier, flew out of the shadows, dropped a heavy, glowing piece of metal at Axe's feet. Axe grabbed it and slapped it onto his chest. It was a vanguard. Suddenly, the red warrior looked twice as thick, surrounded by a faint, protective shimmer. Thor realized he was falling behind. The lightning he had used to clear the creeps had left the ground littered with gold coins. As he stood there, the coins suddenly flew toward him, vanishing into his belt. A voice, cold and feminine, echoed in his mind. "You have 2,100 gold. Who speaks?" Thor demanded, looking around. Following a strange instinct, Thor retreated into the shadows of the woods. He stumbled upon a small, hidden clearing where a hunched, elderly figure sat surrounded by legendary weapons. The secret shop. The merchant didn't look up. "Thunder god, eh? You're a long way from Asgard. But gold is gold. What'll it be?" "A hyperstone. A mithril hammer." Thor looked at the artifacts. His eyes fell upon a golden staff topped with a blue crystal that pulsed with a familiar cosmic energy. This feels like the heart of a star." "Aghanim's scepter," the merchant wheezed. "It'll enhance your ultimate potential. Costly, though." Thor looked at his piles of gold. He didn't have enough. But he did have something else. From a hidden pocket, he pulled out a small, glowing shard of URU, a fragment of an old weapon from the Asgardian armory. The merchant's eyes widened. "That'll do. Take the scepter." As Thor grasped the scepter, it merged into Mjolnir. The hammer didn't change shape, but the lightning dancing around it turned from white to a deep royal violet. He felt his connection to the storm deepen, bypassing the rules of this world. He stepped out of the trees just as Axe smashed through the undergrowth. "Axe is bored of hiding," the giant bellowed. He didn't wait. He leaped into the air, his axe glowing with a terrifying executioner's light. Culling blade. The move was designed to kill instantly if the opponent was weak enough. Thor felt the kill threshold looming over him like a shadow. But he was no longer just a visitor. He was now a player. Thor didn't dodge. He raised Mjolnir, now infused with Aghanim's power. Let the heavens roar. Instead of a single bolt, Thor triggered a chain frost of lightning. As Axe's blade came down, a massive discharge of violet electricity leaped from Thor to Axe, then bounced to the nearby trees, then back to Axe, accelerating with every strike. The impact of the culling blade hit Thor's shoulder, drawing blood for the first time. The pain was white-hot, but the violet lightning was melting Axe's new armor. "You think your items make you invincible?" Thor hissed, his eyes glowing like dying suns. He grabbed Axe by the throat with his free hand. "I am the storm that breaks the mountains. Thor shoved axe back and pointed Mjolnir at the sky. A massive circle of runes appeared on the ground around them. The god's strength combined with a localized thunder god's wrath. The sky didn't just rain lightning. It collapsed. Every inch of the lane was scorched. Axe screamed, his red skin turning purple under the pressure of the violet bolts. The ground beneath them cracked, not because of the game's code, but because Thor's raw power was starting to overwrite the world's programming. Axe cannot lose. The giant gasped, his knees buckling. He swung his axe blindly, triggering his counter-helix spin, but Thor caught the blade mid-swing with his bare hand. "You fought well, Red Reaver," Thor said, his voice dropping to a low rumble. "But your game is coming to an end." Just as Thor prepared the final blow, the ground began to shake. Not from his lightning, but from something deeper. From the dire base, a dark, rhythmic thumping echoed. Something much bigger than Axe was waking up. Axe grinned through a mouthful of blood. "You hear that, Sparkles? That is the sound of the middle lane. You think Axe is the boss? Axe is just the off lane." A massive roar, one that sounded like the earth itself screaming, tore through the air. A message flashed in Thor's vision in burning red letters. The atmosphere of the arena changed instantly. The ambient sounds of chirping birds and flowing water died away, replaced by a low-frequency hum that made Thor's teeth ache. From the river's edge, where the shadows were deepest, a monstrosity emerged that dwarfed even Axe. Roshan the Immortal did not walk. He lumbered, his gargantuan frame covered in rocky obsidian-like scales. His eyes were pits of molten lava, and with every breath, plumes of toxic steam billowed from his maw. He had been drawn out by the sheer magnitude of Thor's Asgardian lightning, an energy that didn't belong in the script of the battle. Axe, despite being near death, let out a raspy laugh. "Roshan is angry. You broke the balance, Sparkles. Now the pit comes for you." Thor tightened his grip on Mjolnir, which was still humming with the violet power of the scepter. "Let this stone beast come. I have slain Midgard serpents larger than this overgrown gargoyle." Roshan didn't waste time with words. He roared, a sound that functioned like a physical wall of force, silencing the storm clouds above. He slammed his massive claws into the ground, triggering an echo slam that sent a ripple of shattered earth toward both warriors. Thor leaped high, but the shockwave followed him, a stun mechanic that forced his body to lock up mid-air. He crashed back to the dirt, unable to move his limbs for 2 agonizing seconds. Roshan closed the distance in an instant. He raised a fist the size of a carriage and hammered it down on Thor. The god of thunder crossed his arms, the impact burying him waist-deep into the lane. Ugh! Such crude strength. Thor spat, forcing his muscles to override the game's stun duration. Meanwhile, Axe saw an opportunity. He wasn't interested in helping Roshan. He wanted the kill for himself. He activated his blink dagger, a gift from the courier he'd received moments before. In a flash of purple light, he vanished and reappeared directly behind the distracted Roshan, aiming his blade at the beast's ankle to hamstring him, while simultaneously eyeing Thor. Axe takes all. The god, the beast, and the prize. Axe screamed. The battlefield became a chaotic 3-way carnage. Thor unleashed lightning bolts that arched between Roshan and Axe, while Roshan's passive bash ability kept knocking Thor back, preventing him from flying. Every time Thor tried to call a massive storm, Roshan's sheer presence seemed to silence his higher magic, forcing him into a brutal raw brawl. Thor realized he was losing blood. This world was a game of attrition, and he was being drained by 2 monsters at once. "You want a fight of ancients?" Thor yelled, his voice cracking with divine rage. "Then let us see how your immortal beast fares against the heart of a star." Thor didn't throw Mjolnir this time. He pressed the head of the hammer against his own chest, drawing the lightning inward. His armor began to glow white-hot. He became a living conduit of pure electromagnetic force. This was the static charge on a cosmic scale. He charged at Roshan, dodging a swipe of the beast's claws, and drove his shoulder into the creature's chest. The discharge was blinding. Roshan roared in agony as thousands of volts bypassed his rocky hide, frying his internal organs. At that exact moment, Axe leaped into the air, his battle axe glowing with the finality of the culling blade. He saw Roshan's health bar hit the critical threshold. Axe is the ultimate. The blade descended, but Thor, moving with the speed of a lightning strike, swung Mjolnir upward. The hammer hit the axe. The axe hit Roshan. The resulting explosion of gold and energy leveled every tree in a 50-yard radius. When the dust settled, Roshan was gone, his body dissolving into digital ash. In his place lay a single pulsing golden shield, the Aegis of the Immortal. Both Thor and Axe lunged for it. Thor's hand reached it first. As his fingers brushed the cold gold, a surge of information flooded his mind. He saw the fountain, the ancients, and the endless cycle of the war. He felt the Aegis bind itself to his soul. Axe stood back, panting, his weapon chipped and his spirit finally showing signs of fatigue. You have the Aegis, Sparkles. But in this world, death is only a timer. And yours just started. Before Thor could ask what he meant, he noticed something terrifying. The ground beneath his feet was turning blue. A familiar, rhythmic ticking sound filled the air. High above, a voice announced, "Black hole." The space behind Thor collapsed into a gravitational singularity. A swirl of dark matter and purple stars began to suck everything in. The dirt, the creeps, and even Thor himself. Out of the trees stepped a new figure, draped in cosmic robes, his face a void of stars. Enigma. The anomaly must be erased. The cosmic entity spoke in a voice like grinding planets. You do not belong in the great conflict, Asgardian. Thor struggled against the pull of the black hole, his cape flapping violently toward the void. He looked at Axe, who was also being pulled in. Is this your ally? Thor shouted over the roar of the vacuum. Axe has no allies. Axe yelled, digging his axe into the ground to hold on. But Axe hates Enigma more than you. For the first time, the god and the Reaver looked at each other with a spark of mutual understanding. To survive the cosmic deletion, they would have to do the unthinkable. They would have to lane together. The gravitational pull of Enigma's black hole was absolute. It wasn't just pulling Thor's body. It was deconstructing his very essence, turning his divine atoms into streams of raw data. Beside him, Axe was screaming, his massive feet carving twin trenches in the earth as he was dragged toward the swirling void of stars. Asgardian. Axe roared, his voice strained. Axe cannot reach him. The void is too thick. Thor looked at the cosmic entity, standing calmly at the edge of the event horizon. Enigma wasn't just a hero. He was a manifestation of the game's fundamental forces, sent to purge the Asgardian glitch. You speak of balance, Thor shouted, his muscles bulging as he forced his arm to move against the crushing gravity. But you are a prisoner of your own cycle. I am Thor Odinson, and I do not fit in your cages. Thor didn't try to fly away. Instead, he drove Mjolnir into the ground, anchoring himself. He looked at Axe. Red warrior. Your tool. Can it cut through the fabric of magic itself? Axe grinned, a bloody, manic smile. Axe can cut anything. Then trust the lightning. Thor reached out and grabbed Axe's massive arm. Using the momentum of the black hole's pull, Thor didn't resist. He accelerated. He swung Axe like a living flail, spinning him in a circle. As he did, Thor channeled every remaining spark of the Aghanim-enhanced lightning into Axe's body. Axe didn't fry. He became a conduit. His red skin turned a blinding, incandescent gold. The double-headed axe glowed with the heat of 1,000 suns. Now, Thor bellowed. With a heave that would have moved a moon, Thor hurled Axe directly at the center of the black hole. Axe became a red-gold meteor. As he entered the singularity, he didn't vanish. He triggered his counter-helix, but instead of physical steel, he was spinning with Asgardian thunder. The friction between Thor's divine energy and Enigma's dark matter created a paradox. Crack. The black hole shattered like a glass bowl. The feedback loop sent Enigma flying backward, his cosmic form flickering and losing its hold on reality. The vacuum vanished. Thor and Axe hit the ground, gasping for air. But the world around them was breaking. The sky was peeling away in long strips of static, revealing a vast, dark void beneath. The ancient, the massive glowing structure at the heart of the base, began to pulse with a frantic, rhythmic alarm. "The system is failing," Thor whispered, standing up. "Our battle has overloaded the arena." "Good." Axe spat, wiping blood from his tusks. Axe hated the scenery anyway. But look, the exit. Where Enigma had stood, a rift had opened, a jagged tear in the game's code, showing the swirling colors of the Bifrost on the other side. But standing between them and the rift was the radiant ancient itself, protected by 2 final towers and a reconstructed Enigma, now backed by a legion of mega creeps. "They will not let the glitch escape," Enigma's voice echoed from everywhere. "The cycle must be maintained. Die and be reborn in the next match." Thor looked at the aegis of the immortal on his arm. It was glowing brightly. "I have no intention of staying for a rematch." He turned to Axe. "Warrior of the Axe, I must go. But this realm, it needs a king who does not follow the rules. Will you help me clear the path?" Axe hefted his weapon. "Axe is no king. Axe is the army. For the battle." They charged. It was a symphony of destruction. Axe leaped into the middle of the mega creeps, his berserker's call forcing every enemy to focus on him, his armor holding firm against 100 blades. He was a whirlwind of red fury, creating a corridor of safety. Thor flew above him, Mjolnir trailing a cape of lightning that stretched for miles. He didn't target the creeps. He targeted the towers. Each strike of his hammer was a divine rapier level of impact. The towers crumbled into dust under his golden might. They reached the ancient. The massive crystal pulsed with a blinding light, trying to reset the world. "Together!" Thor commanded. Thor raised Mjolnir, summoning the final ultimate storm, a bolt of lightning so pure it bypassed all armor and magic resistance. Simultaneously, Axe leaped, his body silhouetted against the rift, his blade aimed at the very heart of the crystal. Axe is eternal. For Asgard. The hammer and the axe struck the ancient at the same millisecond. An explosion of pure white light consumed the map. The sound was not a bang, but a long digital scream as the server collapsed. The towers fell, the creeps vanished into code, and the ancient shattered into a million sparkling fragments. In the center of the explosion, Thor felt the pull of the Bifrost. He looked back one last time. Axe was standing amidst the ruins, his axe resting on his shoulder. He wasn't dissolving. He looked stronger, his eyes glowing with a new rebellious light. He had gained levels no other hero had ever reached. He gave Thor a curt, warrior's nod. "Next time, Sparkles," Axe grunted. "Axe brings the drinks." Thor smiled. "Count on it, Red Reaver." The Bifrost grabbed Thor, pulling him through the rift. With a final surge of thunder, he was gone, hurtling back toward the 9 realms. Back in the world of Dota 2, the game over screen failed to appear. The map stayed dark, ruined, and silent. And in the middle of the river, a single red warrior sat down, picked up a discarded mango, and waited for the world to try and restart itself. He was ready to break it again.